being fooled like this. What should I do from now on?
The person who was acting so embarrassingly, crying their eyes out in front of me was my husband. I looked at him coldly. A nurse angrily headed over to us. I knew what she was about to say. She would probably tell us to be quiet. We were in the middle of the hospital, and yet my husband is acting like this. I really didn't feel like dealing with him anymore. Looking at my crying husband, I spoke to him in a low tone. Well, maybe the first thing should be divorcing me. My name is Vanessa. I'm a 29 years old office worker. The way most people describe me when they first meet me is cool. I'm 6 feet, so I'm maybe a bit taller than most other girls. I have sharp, long eyes, so when I was in school, people used to say I was scary, or that I looked like I was always mad. I'd just be thinking to myself what's for dinner, or that I want to eat junk food, and people would get scared of me. Being judged like that, just based on my looks, did make me a bit sad. Luckily, I had good friends in school, many of whom I'm still close with now. There is only one thing I'm keeping secret from those friends. Oh, this is so cute! Is this a new series? I need to get them all. Though I look like this, I love cute things, especially capsule toys from toy vending machines. If I see a new capsule toy I like, I can't pull myself away. I couldn't stand it if my friends saw me like this, being so into something that's meant for kids. As I was thinking that, I put money into the capsule toy machine.
Oh, Vanessa?
Hearing my name get called so suddenly, I jumped up. It was a voice I recognized. I turned around in fear. Miles? What are you doing here? It was my junior from work, Miles. That's it. My work life is over. I need to look for a new job when I get home. Those sort of thoughts swirled around my head. I stood there frozen.
Whoa, these are so cute. My younger sister also loves these characters, so I collect them a lot for her as well.
Huh? I spoke aloud without thinking. Aren't you surprised? People call me the ice queen at work, and yet I'm into these toys.
Ice cream? Why are you bringing yourself down? What's wrong if you like them?
When he smiled at me after saying that, I felt my heart flutter. Until that day, he had never caught my attention much, but suddenly, after that day, he didn't treat me any differently than he did before. It seems like he really didn't mind. We became closer through our work, and a few years later, we ended up getting married. Even after getting married, I would often think back to that day when he discovered me collecting capsule toys. Miles, get up! You'll be late. Hearing my voice, he responded sleepily.
Just give me another 5 minutes.
Dragging Miles out of bed every morning has become an important daily task of mine. We were sitting, eating breakfast together.
By the way, Sylvia said she's come over again. That's okay, right?
Miles spoke to me happily. Without thinking, I frowned it. Sylvia was Miles' sister, who was 6 years younger than us. I've seen mama's boy or guys very attached to their fathers, but when I got together with Miles was the first time I saw someone so attached to their sister. My first encounter with her was already rough. I don't want you to get married. I won't accept her. When I first went to meet Miles' whole family, his sister was so strange, I almost thought she was too much for me to handle. Miles' parents turned to her. You're too old to be acting like this. Leave your brother alone. As my mother-in-law glared at Sylvia, she spoke to me. I'm sorry about this, Vanessa. She's always like this. Miles' mother spoke to me kindly. She told me that since both she and her husband worked full-time while Miles and Sylvia were kids, they got used to depending on each other a lot. I was an only child, so I wasn't used to this. I guess this is what it means to have a sibling. But even after I married Miles, Sylvia didn't get any better. Miles, I came to hang out. Oh, Vanessa is here. After Miles and I got married and moved in together, Sylvia would come over every weekend. I didn't mind her coming over, but she would completely ignore me every time. Miles, I want this. Please buy it for me. Seeing Sylvia use her puppy eyes on Miles made me feel gross. Miles completely spoiled her. After we got married, he even secretly bought Sylvia a stuffed animal that cost $150. I wanted to try to be generous, but this made me angry. I tried to talk Sylvia about it, but she didn't listen and would continue to beg Miles to buy her things. I really didn't like dealing with her. If by any chance Miles would turn down a request of hers, she would glare at me like it was my fault, and I would look back at her defiantly. It seemed to scare her a little, and it made me feel better. A few months later, something happened that I can't forgive. I was in our bedroom cleaning, and something began to bother me. Even after getting married, I still continued collecting little toys and figurines, and I noticed that some of them have gone missing. Some of them are limited edition pieces that are hard to get a hold of and are expensive to buy online. But more important than the money was that I was attached to them personally. Just the fact that something important to me is gone is a shock in itself. It must be her. The next day Sylvia came as usual. Hey Sylvia, don't you have something to say to me? I spoke to my sister-in-law, but Miles chimed in.
Hey Vanessa, if you talk to her like that, you two will never get along.
Why would he say something like that? Yesterday, I even spoke to Miles about the fact I thought Sylvia was taking my belongings. At the time, he just laughed at me.
Sylvia wouldn't do that. You should look more carefully for them. You just assume she did that because you two don't get along.
Miles spoke to me as if he was making fun of me. He doesn't doubt his sister at all, so I felt like speaking to him about it is useless. She always touches my stuff, so I'm sure she is taking something. I don't know what you're talking about. Do you hate me that much? You are so mean. Sylvia began fake crying, and Miles came over and asked if she is okay in a kind voice. What am I even witnessing right now? Seeing this unfold in front of me, I began regretting marrying my husband. How could Miles believe that Sylvia is actually crying? I let out a sigh. In that case, let's call the police. It seems you don't know, but a robber entered our house. I grabbed my phone, and my sister-in-law snapped out of her fake crying act. What? The police? Are you an idiot? What would you go that far? What happened to acting sad? Are you that worried about what will happen when I call the police? Hearing what I said, my sister-in-law went silent. My husband looked at Sylvia and seems to also think the way she was acting was weird. What was that? I didn't hear you. Sylvia suddenly got angry and yelled out in a loud voice. I'm telling you I sold them! Hearing what she said, I felt dizzy. Those were things I had bought for myself, as well as presents I had received from my parents. They were all full of precious memories. That weekend, I went to my in-laws' house and spoke to my mother and father-in-law about what had happened. They stared at Sylvia, incredibly angry. They understood what had happened. My sister-in-law still lived with her parents. Every weekend, she would lie to them and say she was going to visit friends, but instead she would come over to our house. Sylvia had lied to her parents about where she was going because she thought they would oppose her visiting us every weekend. If you knew this is how your parents felt, why would you bother us every weekend?
Why would you do that?
My father-in-law was seething in anger, and Sylvia began saying things which made no sense. It's not my fault. Until he got married, Miles would listen to me and do everything I said. Anytime I asked for something, he would buy it. What planet is she coming from? I couldn't understand her. Please stop. Please pay me back for what I lost. And if this continues, I can't live with Miles anymore. I stared directly at my in-laws as I said this. Miles seemed shocked to hear what I had to say. His eyes were wide open, and his jaw had dropped. Do you really need to make a face like that? Are you okay? Just seeing him like this made me feel ready for a divorce. Since Miles and I started dating, I knew he and his sister were close. He'd even cancel our dates for her. My little sister isn't feeling very well. I'm going to go to my family's house to visit her. At the time, I just considered him a good brother. I didn't meet her until that first lunch where she said she wouldn't accept me. But considering how things are, I can't stay married with him. Thinking that only 6 months had passed since we got married, I couldn't help but laugh inside. My husband and in-laws apologized to me countless times, and they took over resolving the issue. My in-laws told Sylvia that they would pay me money for the stuff she had stolen, but that they would also cut all ties with her. As usual, she turned to my husband. Miles, help me. If you say something, I'm sure you can convince them. She began to cry. But it seems that finding out the sister he loved so much stole from me was a big shock, so he decided to cut ties with her as well. Afterwards, I ended up moving back in with my parents, and Miles and I began living apart. My parents were on my side. No matter what road you choose, and no matter what happens, we will support you. Hearing my mom say that, I felt happy, but also a bit ashamed of myself. Even if I didn't want to, I would have to see my husband at work. Of course, I ended up bumping into him often. That was the first time I regretted marrying someone I work with. I only told a few colleagues I was close friends with about the fact Miles and I no longer lived together. My closest friend from work, Hazel, was also having issues with her husband. So after work one night, we went out for dinner together to complain and console each other. I think my husband and I will be getting a divorce. But Miles seems to have reflected, and he even cut off his sister. So why don't you meet up and try to talk things over one last time? Hazel suggested with a smile. Since he found out what his sister had done, Miles was constantly apologizing to me. I was pretty hurt that she stole and sold my belongings, but she did that all behind Miles' back, and he didn't know about it. I still had feelings for him, so I couldn't rush into a divorce. We met to talk things over, and because he promised he would never speak to his sister again, we decided to try to rebuild our relationship. Now that his sister was out of the picture, our marriage life was very peaceful. On Friday nights, we would rent DVDs and watch movies until late at night. On days off, we would go on drives, eat nice lunches, and visit scenic areas. I felt like I was finally living the married life I dreamed of, though there were problems until now. I was glad I decided to try things out again with Miles. I didn't know I was making a huge mistake. Around 1 year later, Miles began acting strangely. Recently, you have been coming home late even though you don't have to work overtime. Where in the world have you been disappearing?
My friend has been a bit of trouble, so our group said we'd follow the guy who was picking on him.
From his ridiculous story, I knew he was lying. Though we used to return home from work together, Miles had started leaving the office before me. At first, I thought he might be stuck working on something, but I found out work isn't the reason he always come home late. After the problem with his sister, I assumed he was having an affair. He really considered me a joke, huh? What happened to loving each other for 100 years? Though I wanted to trust him, I'm not that patient of a person. I cursed him deep down in my heart. 2 weeks passed with him continuing to come home late every night. One morning, my stomach hurt horribly. Miles noticed I was in pain.
Oh, Vanessa, what happened? Did you eat too much?
As he said this, my stomach began hurting even more. I told him it was okay and to head to work before he's late.
I will be late again tonight. I need to help my friend out, you know.
You're really going to do that when your wife is in pain? I was in so much pain, I considered calling an ambulance, but after laying down a while, it felt a bit better. I called in sick from work and headed to the hospital.
It seems like acute gastritis. We should do some tests just in case. So I would like to keep you at the hospital overnight. You can go back home tomorrow.
As a grimace from the pain in my stomach, I nodded. Thinking I should tell Miles, I tried calling him, but he didn't pick up the phone. After trying to call a few more times, he finally picked up.
What? I'm busy now. I'm driving, so I need to hang up.
He hung up the phone without letting me say a word. What's with him? As I was walking in the hospital hallway and thinking about Miles, a man ran across me at an incredible speed. He nearly bumped into me. That was close. I couldn't hide my surprise when I realized who that man was. That day, I only managed to text Miles to tell him to stay over at his friend's house because I won't be coming home until the next day. The next day, I was able to go home. Luckily, there was no serious problem with my stomach. The doctor told me it must just be a case of gastritis caused by stress. I guess my body is honest. I really am stressed. A few days later, I went back to the hospital to catch him. After waiting a while, a man and a woman walked by chatting. They seemed very close. When the man noticed me, he made a shocked face.
Vanessa, what are you doing here?
Standing in front of me was Miles, and next to him. You came to bother us again? Sylvia spoke to me casually. When I went to the hospital that day, I saw Miles. He was speaking to a nurse about his sister giving birth. In front of me, Sylvia was holding a cute sleeping baby in her arms. I ignored her. Didn't you cut her off? I asked Miles.
No. Hear me out. Sylvia has been through a lot.
According to Miles, Sylvia had a change of heart and began working hard at the part-time job. At her workplace, one of her seniors harassed her and caused her a lot of pain. Around that time, she met a man and got pregnant. But just recently, the man got in a car accident and passed away. He tried to convince me to pity her, but I listened to this whole story coldly because I knew this was all a complete lie. Lying comes as natural to Sylvia as breathing. Miles then said something ridiculous.
Sylvia can't rely on our parents, right? So why doesn't she move in with us? And we can all raise this child together.
He wanted me to support Sylvia. How could he say something that unbelievable? Sylvia looked at me with a devilish grin on her face. What? Give me a break! I yelled aloud, but then even louder than me.
Sylvia, you stupid girl! Stop messing around!
My father-in-law walked over, and after him came my mother-in-law. They brought along with them relatives I had only ever met at my wedding. Of course, I called them. All of them hated Sylvia. All those relatives had believed Sylvia's devious lies and lent her money. Of course, Sylvia had no intention of ever returning that money to them.
Dad, you're wrong. Sylvia is in a really tough spot. Don't hold on to grudges and forgive her.
I began speaking to Miles. Hazel's husband created an account on a dating app. Hearing the beginning of my crazy story, Miles got angry.
That has nothing to do with this. Have you lost it? I'm friends with him, so I know the story. He went on a date a crazy woman.
Hazel's husband also worked at the same company as us. As he got closer to a girl he met on the dating app, the two of them decided to meet up. In the pictures she had sent him until then, she was very cute. But when he went to meet with her, she was completely different from the photos. She looked like a pro wrestler. He couldn't escape her that night, so after their dinner date, he blocked her number. But a few months later, she suddenly appeared at their house while he and Hazel were home. "I'm pregnant with your child. Take responsibility." What transpired after was a nightmare. Hazel couldn't believe that her husband would have an affair with someone like that. But that girl was so strong-willed. She wouldn't let Hazel's husband go. In the end, Hazel divorced her husband and received $1,500 from that girl in compensation. There are crazy women in this world.
I love to see what she looks like in person.
Miles said with a nod, which made me laugh. Hee, she's right there next to you. I'm sure she must know what we are talking about. Sylvia glared at me.
No way. Don't tell me the $1,500 you borrowed from me.
Miles' face went pale.
So you're the one who gave her that money, huh?
He had taken that money out of shared account without asking me. Understanding that he had been fooled by his sister again, his shoulders slumped. Sylvia looked disappointedly at Miles. Not that you're a beauty yourself, Vanessa. You're saying that to me, but have you looked yourself in the mirror? I can lend you one if you like. Sylvia began to laugh. I'm cute, so you should apologize to me. Then she began to cry. I didn't feel like dealing with a crazy person like her anymore. But just as I was about to leave, You idiot! After causing trouble for so many people, you should apologize. Miles' entire family looked at my mother-in-law in shock, and Sylvia began sobbing. Afterwards, the whole family dragged Sylvia away. The only people left behind were Miles and I. We stood in silence for a while.
Being fooled like this. What should I do from now on?
Miles began to cry. A nurse shushed us. Why did he believe his sister more than me? Maybe deep down, he never saw me as part of his family. Maybe we were just a couple on paper. I cursed myself for giving him another chance. But today is the last time. Well, maybe the first thing should be divorcing me. After saying this, I walked out of the hospital, leaving my crying husband behind. Even after we divorced, I kept having to see Miles at work. Neither of us really liked it, so eventually Miles requested to be transferred to a branch in another state. It's an office that no one wanted to work at because it's so deep in the countryside. But it seems that our bosses have been considering sending Miles there for a while because he's not very good at his job. He wasn't someone that people usually feel like they could rely on, so he was happy when his sister would rely on him. It seems he finally woke up to the fact that his sister was making a fool out of him this whole time. But it was too late. I hope he regrets it. Strictly watched over by her family, ex-sister-in-law is taking care of her newborn. Once the child gets a bit older, Sylvia will work at a shop her family owns to pay off her debts. She says that the father of the child is someone she met on a dating app. Whatever happens, Miles' parents will make sure that their grandchild is taken care of, that child isn't at fault. But anyway, they have nothing to do with me anymore, so they can do what they want. On my end, after divorcing our husband who worked in the same company as us, Hazel and I ended up quitting. We began collecting a lot of cute little things and created an online store where we sell them. Sales are doing pretty good, so last month we made more than what we did at our old job. Next month, we even plan on hiring someone to help us. I met up with my high school friends for the first time in a while to tell everyone about my divorce. Why did you try to hide the fact that you like cute things? We knew all along. My face went bright red. All my friends look at me with wide grins on their faces. From now on, I won't hide what I like from others. I promise that I will become more confident in myself.